Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devyam Saraswatyam Vyasam. Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nasta Praishva Bhadreshu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. It is a real pleasure to be here this morning. This verse today is just a fantastic purport. In the text, Bhishma is giving, we just hear Bhishma talked about this and this and this and this. And then in the purport, Prabhupada explains it from different sources, all the different things that Bhishma said, he elaborates on. So let's start with this, text 27. We're in the 9th chapter of the first canto. Dana Dharman Raja Dharman Moksha Dharman Vipagashaha Sri Dharmam Bhagavat Dharman Samasa Vyasa Yogataha Dana Dharman Raja Dharman Moksha Dharman Vipagashaha Sri Dharmam Bhagavat Dharman Samasa Vyasa Yogataha. Please chant.
Dana Dharma Raja Dharma
Dana Dharman Raja Dharman
Moksha Dharma Vipagashaha
Moksha Dharman Vipagashaha
Sri Dharma Bhagavat Dharma Samasya Vyasa Yogata Dana Dharman Raja Dharma Moksha Dharman Vipagashaha Sri Dharma Bhagavat Dharma Samasya Vyasa Yogata Dana Dharma Raja Dharma Moksha Dharma Vipagashaha Sri Dharma Bhagavat Dharma Samasya Vyasa Yogata Dana Dharma Raja Dharma Moksha Dharma Vipagashaha Sri Dharma Bhagavat Dharma Samasya Vyasa Yogata
Dana Dharma Raja Dharma
Dana Dharma Raja Dharma
Moksha Dharma
Vipagashaha Sri Dharma Bhagavat Dharma Samasya Vyasa Yogata. Anyone else? Dana Dharma Raja Dharma Moksha Dharma Vibhagasaha Sri Dharma Bhagavad Dharma Samasya Yogataha. All right, before we do the synonyms, anyone know what is Dana Dharma? Dana means what? Charity. Charity. And Raja, king, yeah, king. Moksha, motion. Stri, women, woman's dharma. And then Bhagavad Dharma. Yes, Bhagavan, Dharma of Krishna consciousness. So he is explaining all these things. So I don't think we need to do the synonyms. Samasa Vyasa Yogata. Vyasa means what? Vyasadeva, right? The various divisions of topics. So all of these he's describing in various divisions. So let's just go to the translation. Together, please. He then explained by divisions acts of charity, pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. Purport. You'd like to start a lengthy purport. We'll take it in pieces and discuss. Any volunteers to read the first one?
Give charity.
To give charity is one of the householder's main functions, and he should be prepared to give in charity at least 50% of his hard-earned money. A brahmachari or student should perform sacrifices, a householder should give charity, and a person in the retired life or in the renounced order should practice penances and austerities. Those are the general functions of all the ashramas, or orders of life on the path of self-realization. In the brahmachari life, the training is sufficiently imparted so that one may understand that the world as property belongs to the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. No one, therefore, can claim to be the proprietor of anything in the world. Therefore, in the life of a householder, which is a sort of license for sex enjoyment, one must give in charity for the service of the Lord. Everyone's energy is generated or borrowed from the reservoir of energy of the Lord. Therefore, the resultant actions of such energy must be given to the Lord in the shape of transcendental, loving service for him. As the rivers draw water from the sea through the clouds and again go down to the sea, similarly, our energy is borrowed from the Supreme Source, the Lord's energy, and it must return to the Lord. That is the perfection of our energy. The Lord, therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita 9:27 says that whatever we do, whatever we undergo as penance, whatever we sacrifice, whatever we eat, or whatever we give in charity, must be offered to him, the Lord. That is the way of utilizing our borrowed energy. When our energy is utilized in that way, our energy is purified from the contamination of material iniquities, and thus we become fit for our original natural life of service to the Lord.
Okay, so Dana Dharma, thank you. Dana Dharma, or charity, is one of the three divisions of pious activities as described in the Gita. What, chapter 17 or 18? Anyway, the charity, austerity, and penance should never be given up, right? Even by great souls, all the sacrifice, austerity, and penance should never be given up. And then Krishna explains them all in the modes of nature. So charity in the modes of nature is described as charity in the mode of ignorance is giving to somebody who's going to misuse the money. It's not given very thoughtfully, just given very randomly. Like we see people often asking for charity on the street, and you feel sorry for the people, but at the same time, there's a good chance if you give them money, they're going to use it for some intoxication. Right? One guy had a sign that said, "I'll be honest, I just want a beer." I mean, people are more inclined to just give him. So, austerity in the mode of passion is given with a thought of return. Okay, I'm giving this money with the idea that I'm going to get something back. And that charity is not really from the heart, it's quite a business deal. You see? Even in terms of spirituality, one thinks I'm going to get some kind of pious return, so therefore I'll give charity now so that I can be happier in the future. This is given without sincerity. It's, you don't really want to help, but just want to get something from it. Like over here at the university, there's, what is it, Hefner Hall, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. All these big buildings are named after the donors. They want their existence to be immortalized in this way, right? So this is one of the great motivators for charity, that you're going to have your name perpetuated. This is charity in the mode of passion. There's a little story about a man who was a miser. He never gave any money, but as he was getting old, I thought I better give something, just in case. He was an atheist, but he went to church and he put $5 in the collection plate. And then he died, and he rose to heaven, and the angel saw him and said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I put my money in the..." He said, "Just a minute, we're going to check our records." He comes back and he says, "Here, take your lousy $5 and go to hell." So charity in the mode of goodness is given for the right purpose to the right person. It's especially meant for which class of people who is supposed to receive charity in a well-organized society? Brahmins, the spiritual leaders, right? This is so that they can teach and help people without any sort of agenda. For example, the great philosopher and politician Chanakya Pandit. This is a very interesting story. The king was corrupt at that time. So Chanakya, being a learned Brahmin, realized that this corrupt king needed to be replaced. So he found a very good-hearted and worthy candidate. Was it Maharaj Chandragupta? Yes. So he cultivated and taught this young man all the aspects of philosophy and politics. And through his excellent education, this Chandragupta managed to rise and replace this corrupt king. So when this happened, Chandragupta Maharaj then wanted Chanakya as his advisor. He said, "Please come and live with me in the palace." And Chanakya said, "No, I just will stay in my hut outside the palace. I don't want to be in any position where my purity can be compromised by some sort of bribery." So this way, the Brahmins are meant to be very objective and always give advice that's meant for the benefit of others without any sort of ulterior motive. Therefore, they are worthy of receiving charity. Charity is the domains particularly of the householders. Why? Because the householders are the only ashram that's meant to generate money. The brahmacharis, brahmacharinis are meant to live at the expense of the householders. Similarly, vanaprasthas and sannyasis. The idea is that in student life particularly, you don't have to worry about money. You should be able to be supported. If anything, go out and beg on behalf of the ashram. And in a charitable society, people are very happy to give for that purpose. Householders are meant to understand that, that the students are dependent upon them, just like their children. And householders are meant to be very prosperous, so that they can give 50% of their income in charity. It's the only ashram, again, that generates money. But the student life, which is most relevant to us here at Krishna House, student life is meant for being financially neutral. You neither make money nor spend money. You don't have to take student loans at Krishna House. You know? I know, Shruti, maybe you should consider that. So, yeah, there's a story about a man who was selling mangoes. Actually, he was charitable. He wanted to give away mangoes, a big barrel of mangoes. He just wanted to give them to the people in the village. So he went out in the village square and started shouting, "Free mangoes, free mangoes." And no one would come. So there must be something fishy going on here. Why is he giving them away? So then he saw no one was coming, so he started saying, "Mangoes, mangoes, 1 rupee." People say, oh, 1 rupee, that's a good price. Then they came like anything. So if you're giving something away for free, people will tend to think that it is less valuable. But in spiritual life, there should be no financial consideration associated with the dispensation of spiritual knowledge, the distribution of spiritual knowledge. Dharmasya hyapavargasya narto utai upakalpate. In the first canto, second chapter, Sutta Goswami explains that religion should never be performed with any sort of economic motive. And if in the course of your spiritual life you do get money, then that's okay, provided you don't use it for sense gratification. If you use it for Krishna, then you remain equally detached. See, sometimes the impersonal idea is that let me just refrain from having anything to do with this world. Impersonalists, and sometimes even in our Sangha, those who are kind of tinged with impersonalism want to be very detached. And just, I'm not going to have money, I'm not going to talk to women, I'm not going to have any kind of, when I see my relatives, I'm going to shake hands with them like this. This is sort of the impersonalist side of us coming out, because in fact, personalism means that we are recognizing, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, that everything belongs to Krishna. So we cannot renounce that which doesn't belong to us. An impersonalist went into a bank and he announced, I renounce all the money in this bank. And the banker was laughing, sir, this money does not belong to you. So we renounce this world, but it doesn't belong to us in the first place. What is the meaning of that renunciation? Real renunciation means what? Yes, to take that which is Krishna's and use it for Krishna. And in the course of that action, sometimes we give charity to spiritual teachers. That's the idea of the dana dharma. So, any comments on this one? Yes, Prabhu. So, spiritual knowledge does not require any payment. How does that apply to books? Yeah, when we're doing book distribution. Yeah, Vaisheshik Prabhu has a nice story about that. He'll get the book in people's hands and he'll encourage them and explain the benefits of the book. And then he'll say, so part of the cycle of sharing spiritual knowledge is then that you make a contribution as a token of appreciation. It doesn't matter what you give, just give something. And so in this way, it's explained philosophically, and it's much smoother. So he did this going door to door one time, and there was a man who said, okay, I'll take your book, but I'm not going to give you any money. So just give us 1 penny. Just give us 1 penny just to complete this cycle and to complete the yajna, the sacrifice. So the man said, I'm not giving you a penny. And then the wife came to the door. And she said, wait a minute, and closed the door. And then he came back a minute later with a $20 bill. As usual, the women had more intelligence. So the point is that the yajna is complete when charity is given. And if it's not given, then the yajna is not completed. This is why if you see at initiation ceremonies, afterwards the initiates go around and beg charity from everybody. This is a chance to express appreciation and help the initiate complete the cycle. So, good. All right, anything else? Okay, Jackson, you want to read the next section? Raja Dharma.
Raja Dharma is a great science, unlike modern diplomacy for political supremacy. The kings were trained systematically to become munificent and not merely be tax collectors. They were trained to perform different sacrifices only for the prosperity of the subjects. To lead the prajas to the attainment of salvation was a great duty of the king. The father, the spiritual master, and the king are not to become irresponsible in the matter of leading their subjects to the path of ultimate liberation from birth, death, diseases, and old age. When these primary duties are properly discharged, there's no need of government of the people, by the people. In modern days, the people in general occupy the administration by the strength of manipulated votes, but they are never trained in the primary duties of the king, and that is also not possible for everyone. Under the circumstances, the untrained administrators play havoc to make the subjects happy in all respects. On the other hand, these untrained administrators gradually become rogues and thieves and increase the taxation to finance a top-heavy administration that is useless for all purposes. Actually, qualified brahmanas are meant to give direction to the kings for proper administration in terms of the scriptures like the Manu Samhita and Dharma Shastras or Parasara. A typical king is the ideal of the people in general. And if the king is pious, religious, chivalrous, and munificent, the citizens generally follow him. Such a king is not a lazy, sensuous person living at the cost of the subjects, but alert always to kill thieves and dacoits. And the pious kings were not merciful to dacoits and thieves in the name of nonsensical ahimsa, nonviolence. The thieves and dacoits were punished in an exemplary way so that in the future no one would dare commit such nuisances in an organized form. Such thieves and dacoits were never meant for administration as they are now.
Is this relevant or what? Prabhupada wrote this in 1961 or 62. And America is such a great country because it's the finest piece of real estate in the world. You know that any kind of government that would be in America would be the top of the world because of the geography. America has this huge network of navigable rivers, and rich soil in the heartland, so people can grow and then send products to market all over the world. Like Africa, for example, is generally impoverished because all the rivers are coming off of mountains and they're not navigable. So there's no cheap and easy way to move goods around. You have to move by air only. So America has this great natural opulence, and yet the government and the administration, I mean, America's such a wealthy country. It's just a little perspective there. America spends 4 times more on defense than the next 3 countries combined. And America is like the gross domestic product of Indiana is the same as the whole country of the Philippines. America is incredibly rich. As of 5% of the world's population and about 25% of the world's resources. So naturally, the American government leadership is a great competition because you're going to be in charge of the most powerful military and the biggest economy in the world. And so historically, there was some sort of sense of responsibility associated with this position. Washington, for example, led the revolution and then became president, the first president. And after 2 terms, he's voluntarily, although he was asked, please run again, he voluntarily said, no, 2 terms is enough. So because they had just gotten rid of a king who had this sort of divine right to rule, regardless of how he performed. And they wanted to have a democracy where you could throw out a bad ruler and replace them with another. So he did not want to set a precedent that would allow for essentially a new king, right? In fact, when Roosevelt was elected for his 3rd and 4th terms, the government passed a constitutional amendment to limit the presidency to 2 terms. So the point is that the ideal government is led by a person of great character. And then, as Prabhupada says, the people will naturally follow. But when the character of the leader becomes corrupted, then it becomes a top-heavy administrative state that just exploits people for taxes. So whoever is running the government of America is running the biggest, wealthiest business, you could say, in the world. So naturally, there's great competition. I have seen in my life, my father used to always say, he would vote based on character. So my father would usually vote Democratic, my mother would vote Republican. They would say to each other, okay, our votes are going to just cancel each other out, so let's not bother voting today. And then they both sneak off and vote. So, The problem, this is the problem with an elected leadership, and that is that there's so much opportunity for corruption. And people, as Prabhupada writes, can make promises. He says it in an interesting way. They create all kinds of havoc to make the people happy in all respects. Well, you would think that that's what government should do, right? Make people happy in all respects. But by creating havoc means that anything goes as long as the voters are happy. This was seen in Rome in the days of the emperors. They would have bread and circuses, right? People want bread and circuses, which meant people slaughtering each other in the Colosseum. Oh, very entertaining. We have football instead. You give people sense gratification, and then you'll get their support. So this is how government is run. And whoever can promise the most sense gratification will get the most votes. But when they get the votes, then they can do whatever they want until the next election comes around. Then they start giving money out and trying to buy more votes. So it's excuse me, the quality of character used to be, even in my lifetime, it used to be much more of an issue. And if people had a slight scandal or a slight whiff of some kind of incongruity, then they would not be able to be elected. There's many examples of this. Even there was one popular candidate who, in the course of the campaign, he was revealed he had had some affair, and then he had to drop out. This was maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but not anymore. So just see the character is going down and down, and the character requirements are so low that people simply promise, yeah, we're going to give you so much sense gratification. Then okay, then they get to vote. And then when they're in power, anything goes. So this is the sad state of politics in Kali Yuga. In the first canto, later on in this first canto, we'll be reading about Dharma, the bull, and the earth as mother cow. And so King Parikshit, after the departure of the Pandavas and Lord Krishna, King Parikshit is ruling the world. He's out touring, and he sees this low-class person is beating a cow and a bull. And the bull has been beaten so badly that 3 legs are broken, only one is remaining. So the bull represents Dharma, and Dharma has 4 pillars: austerity, cleanliness, compassion, and honesty. So this bull, Dharma the bull, has lost his 3 legs and is standing only on honesty. So until recently, honesty seemed to have some place in this American political system, but not anymore. It's done. And so now all of the Dharma is gone. Let us see what has happened, what happens. It does not bode well that spirituality, honesty, any principles of sattva gun are now devoid or no longer important in government. Yeah. So, any comments on this before we move on? Gopal, Prabhu, please. Gopal the senior. Everyone make Gopal the junior.
No, I just wanted to put real simple words some of the things you were saying. According to Vedic culture, character is more important than actual ability to lead.
Yes, that's the point. Yes, character is the first consideration, not the last. Somebody has rotten character, but good policies that will make us more money, we'll vote. Okay, anything else? Okay, Jackson.
I was reading chapter 1 of the Gita yesterday with my mom, and a lot of that chapter in the purports discusses this, and she made the point that on the external, it looks like to the material world, it looks like you're gaining more freedom as time is going on, like with the way that women's rights are moving, or the way that the government is moving into this more like open-ended sense. But she made the point that like it's on the surface, it may look like there's more freedom, but right underneath, it's this great degradation, like where women's rights are now. And it's this very liberal, very open, very whimsical kind of state of being, there's just right under the surface this immense degradation, and it's the same with the government. And I think it's just, yeah, it's like a layer of cream, and then
it appears to be freedom.
yeah.
Right. This nice verse in chapter 5 of the Gita, Yehi samsparsha boga dukkha yonaya evate advanta dvanta kote nate shu ramate buddha. The sense gratification is actually a source of misery, and therefore intelligent people don't take part in it. So your mother's point is that liberality is an excuse for more sense gratification. Although it appears to be refinement, it actually is supporting more corruption, degradation. And by the way, how nice it is you read the Bhagavad Gita with your mother. A pleasure I never had in my entire life. This is such a good segue. I'm going to just skip ahead a few paragraphs to the Sri Dharma. Anyone would like to read that section? It's down there at the end of the purport. Okay, John? That's it. As far as women classes.
As far as the women class are concerned, they are accepted as power inspiration for men. As such, women are more powerful than men. Let me read that again. As such, women are more powerful than men. Mighty Julius Caesar was controlled by Cleopatra. Such powerful women are controlled by shyness. Therefore, shyness is important for women. Once this control value is loosened, women can create havoc in society by adultery. Adultery means production of unwanted children, known as Varna Sankara, who disturb the world.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You might recognize this from chapter 1 of the Gita, in which Arjuna is saying, if I kill all these warriors, then all these women will be widows, and then there will be children out of wedlock. So this is one of his hesitations in fighting. So this Sri Dharma is a beautiful function of society in an organized society. It is natural for women to want to nurture and raise and educate and train children. That is a natural function of the female body. However, that requires a protected environment. And as Jackson, as your mom's pointing out, the name of liberality for women's rights is really a reflection of the men who are dacoits. In other words, the men have become so degraded that they're not willing or able to give protection to women to fulfill that natural function. So some practical things in our Sangha. We have a lot of strong statements from Prabhupada about the role of women. A lot of strong statements in his book about the role of women in society. And this is very uncomfortable for most women who read them in our society. Isn't it? Like right there in the first chapter of the Gita, women generally are less intelligent and should be treated like children. That's pretty much for a lot of people what happens, right? That social view, which is quite not only Vedic but Victorian in the terms the Prabhupada was raised in the context he was raised, makes sense if there are men who are responsible. But if there are men who are irresponsible, then women have to take care of themselves. They have to. Women have to take care of themselves. And so the Prabhupada called women's liberation a plot by the men to exploit women. Women will earn money and do more work and not be bound by wedlock, so the men can enjoy and exploit the women in so many ways. So this is a good example of being able to take things in context. What will apply in one set of social circumstances does not apply in another. So if we try to say, okay, well, the role of women should be applied in 21st century America right now, no, then it's completely absurd. Prabhupada used a very strong word, a word he did not like. Anyone know the word? Impossible. He said, it is impossible to impose one set of cultural values on another culture. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he said, if you try to do the impossible, that is niyamagraha. That's a cause of fall down in spiritual life. So people who are really very xenophobic or ethnocentric and just see things in terms of their society will have a hard time with this concept of applying the higher principle of bhakti in various cultural circumstances. So it's important to take these statements in their cultural context and understand they are not universal and they don't apply in all times and circumstances. Prabhupada makes very many strong statements about the stupidity of men also in this and other purports. So it isn't unbalanced, but the social thing that we experience as Americans feeling repulsed by these strong statements are generally based on ultimately on the failure of men to protect women in a responsible way in our society. All right, any comments on this? John, and then presence. Okay, John got his hand up first. He wanted to read that line again.
So strong men, strong society, weak families, weak society, opportunity for exploitation. So how do we make strong men in our society, specifically our Krishna conscious society?
Right, that's a beautiful question. And the answer is by being Krishna conscious. If we are understanding the goal of life, then we approach marriage in that mindset, husband and wife. Right? Like this is a temporary arrangement to help navigate life in this world. And we're using it for the purpose of maintaining and improving our Krishna consciousness, helping one another in our Krishna consciousness, because this relationship is not going to last. But our Krishna consciousness will last. When I'm dying, my wonderful wife and my wonderful husband is not going to come, oh, I'll save you. But if both husband and wife are enlightened and understand the temporary nature of the body, the temporary nature of this world, the fact this is not our home and we're right on the edge of falling into another birth, unless we really take it seriously, then a married life is as good as sannyas life. It is a renounced life. So that there is really no difference between sannyas life or grihastha life as far as spiritual life is concerned, if we're serious about our spiritual life. There's a strong tendency to see, well, the sannyasis are really serious and the grihasthas are licentious. But that isn't the case if there's a proper understanding. Therefore, students properly run in ashram will understand that either choice is good. Simple life, single life in the student stage is a beautiful experience. And you want to keep it going as long as you can, reasonably. But then you'll come to a junction. As the famous philosopher Yogi Berra said, when you come to a junction in the road, take it. You have to make a decision and take a renounced path or an attached path, a pravritti marg or a nivritti marg. But in Krishna consciousness, they're equally valuable. Okay, that's really important to understand, because especially men, we talk about men not having a clue, men not being responsible. It's because in our sangha, it's often because the renunciation is pushed so heavily that men then cannot approach marriage in a healthy state of mind. And that's very much to the detriment of their spiritual lives and everyone's spiritual lives. So if men and women understand the spiritual purpose, then marriage is very good. Okay, presence, what is your thought?
So, obviously, if the world were also, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this topic. It's very timely. I was literally just talking to people about questions I had.
Oh, great.
So I feel so grateful to Krishna and grateful to you.
Glad you're here.
Yeah. So I'm coming to Krishna consciousness late in life. And so I have lived most of my life around irresponsible, non-Krishna conscious men. And so I'm just kind of like, I'm good. and I'm at a stage where, when I think about, this is obviously just like a theoretical, or not theoretical, this is just a framework where they're like, you go 0 to 25 brahmachari, 25 to 50, you're in the grihasta, and then you go into the retired state, and then into sannyas. So I'm like 10 years away from being in the retired state. So I'm like, why even do the grihasta state? But then Prabhupada has spoken to how, the in this cultural context, like the pathway of women is your spiritual master is your father. My father's not Krishna conscious, and then your spiritual master is your husband, and then it's your son. But for someone like me who's like late to life in Krishna consciousness, doesn't really want to go on the path of that, like what is the path?
Excellent question. So Prahlad Maharaj says it's always too late to take up Krishna consciousness, but it's never too early. So that's this question comes up because the role of women in leadership in ISKCON is a difficult topic, and women who have spent their whole life in Krishna consciousness are denied leadership roles spiritually because of their gender, and it's just wrong, especially in our society. But that's what's going on. We're working on that. But the one of the arguments that people use in favor of keeping women out of leadership roles is that Prabhupada did not put women in leadership roles in his time. That's not entirely true, but it was generally true. Most of the young leaders in his society were men, and he wanted them. But we have to take into context that these women were in their 20s, the young men too. And the 20s for most women is childbearing and child-rearing years. And in a traditional valued society, that would be a time when they can be totally focused on that. So, but if a woman has been Krishna conscious for 50 years and is past that and has aspiring disciples and is teaching, then why should that woman not be able to give them spiritual leadership? So if you're saying that you don't want to bother with the grihasta life,
yeah, even before I came to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, so I think Prabhupada would say very good. If you can avoid it altogether, that's very good. Yeah, Rasika's back there nodding his head. Yeah. But if it's not your nature to avoid it, and you try to avoid it out of some other consideration like prestige or even in the mode of passion, you renounce because things are troublesome, that's also incomplete and unsustainable renunciation. Krishna consciousness is individual, and each person expresses it and experiences it in their own unique way. As Homer says to Bart, "You're unique, son, just like everybody else." Everybody has their own individual manifestation because we all have our own individual relationship with Krishna. And that's the beauty of devotional service, that over time, our own unique personal relationship with God becomes manifest. It's manifest through things that we are drawn to and things that we are repulsed by. So if we're drawn to householder life and married life, but we're avoiding it artificially, then we are stunting our growth. On the other hand, if we're not attracted to it, well, I have to do it, that's also a mistake. You see, so now you mentioned woman is supposed to have the spiritual master, and then the husband becomes a spiritual master, and then that's not exactly the understanding. That the idea is woman should have protection, so that she is able to execute her function as a mother. Okay, and then having been protected, remain in a protected situation through life, and not have the responsibility of having to be in the military, or having to earn a living, right? Rather be the matriarch of the home and the family. And this is what Prabhupada writes. It's very true. That women are the most powerful gender because they can control the men. There was a interviewer who was asking a woman who was opposed to the female candidate for president. She was saying, well, women shouldn't be in leadership roles. They're too emotional. They just start a war. And the reporter says, unlike all the other wars in history that have been started by men. So I think you're on the right track exactly by saying, yeah, if that doesn't appeal to you, you don't have to worry about it. There's no cookie cutter formula, okay? Another important point to understand, especially in this section, is that varnashram is a material consideration. The varnashram system is not spiritual in and of itself. When Lord Chaitanya was speaking with his student, Ramananda Roy, he asked, so how should we perfect our lives? Ramananda Roy suggested, well, how about varnashram? And Lord Chaitanya said, no, that's material. So varnashram is helpful for people who are not Krishna conscious. But the goal of varnashram is to be Krishna conscious. So if you're Krishna conscious, you don't have to bother with varnashram. At night, you have a flashlight. It's helpful to look around. But when the sun's up, what do you need a flashlight for? So varnashram can be helpful in the darkness of ignorance, but when you have Krishna. So devotees should not get hung up on these social considerations. And being a spiritual master means you help to see the inclinations and the natural direction of the disciple. So you can help them, just like in counseling, right? You help the person find the solution to their own problems and make their own way. And that's the beauty of spiritual culture. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's great. I just have a follow-up question. Maybe this is material, so I apologize for that. But something else that I have experienced while, out on Harinam Sankirtan and like doing food distribution is I get hit on quite a bit. And there's this like desire in me to have like a nun's habit, to have like the uniform that is like, okay, like that's just not like, and I know that, for brahmacharis, they take saffron. And so is there anything like that for women in this movement?
We do have brahmacharini vows at Krishna House. It's not a common practice, but we try to encourage that in our sangha right locally. People have done different things. Just easy on the makeup and the earrings and so forth. The traditional dot on the forehead as a stop sign. Okay. But if you're being hit on, that's unfortunate. It really not much you can do out on Harinam.
Not by Krishna consciousness.
Right. But if you ever are hit on by a Krishna conscious person, that's important to know that that's okay. That's not acceptable in the context of a devotional community. And that extends to like private communication, somebody sending you a text. So how's your spiritual life? Block. We have a rule of 3 that you have men and women interact freely in a public situation. You should not be alone in a private place like that. So this is our best attempt to apply spirituality in the context of our society. And men and women are quite used to coeducational environments. In India, a women's ashram would be frowned upon. In America, if you don't have a women's ashram, you only get weird men. Yeah. Weird in the sense of like, I'm artificially renounced. I'm going to ever look at a woman. But they're just repressing their natural inclinations. So for most people, 95% of devotees will be householders. And men who are very renounced or very ugly, they'll be sannyas. Just kidding. Some people, rare men, are naturally renounced. They are comfortable in that environment. Comfortable means they can interact freely with anybody and not feel disturbed. So yeah, it's what can you do? Tolerate getting hit on in the gross society, but you should not tolerate it in devotee society. Okay. All right. My candy. There we go. Is it all right if we go over time? Actually, it's 8:30. We have to stop now. Sorry. I'm sorry. Just want to do that and get even.
On the previous point of Prabhupada, how just the government leaders just come to power. And just to give a historical context, Prabhupada's writing this, as he said, in the early 60s. And India got independent in 1947 after quite a long struggle over a century of struggle. And I was reading recently that actually by 1951, the son-in-law of the prime minister, he had demanded for a commission to be set up to look into corruption. That was only 4 years of of independent. I was quite shocked actually, and I was like, well, what did they do in 4 years? They just got independent. So I'm just reflecting that Prabhupada was there and he saw how, this, in this democratic India, but still the character of leaders was that great, and and there were some decent people in the government who were like, we have to set up a commission to see what's actually going on.
Yeah, very nice. You mentioned Indian politics. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, what you say his policies are good or not, I can't say, but it is wonderful to see that his prime minister is has so much appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. Some incredible quotes that he just opened a temple, ISKCON temple in the suburb of Bombay, and anyone see these quotes? He was just glorifying Prabhupada on and on and on. So how he's been such an ambassador of goodwill and peace in the world, representing the best of India. So occasionally you see a leader in appreciating the saintly people that you will not see as often in other parts of the world. Anyway, okay. We didn't get to read the juiciest part of this purport, but it's breakfast running late. All right, how's everybody's? It is said, the mind can only conceive what the seat can endure. You want to stand up for a minute, stretch? All right, Bull? No? Okay. All right, so let's get back a couple paragraphs, Nate, if you would. Just one paragraph back. Yeah, this is wonderful. This paragraph, as far as salvation is concerned. So this is like Moksha Dharma or even Bhagavad Dharma. Who'd like to read this paragraph? Bruce? Okay.
As far as salvation is concerned, one has to conquer the principles of lust, anger, unlawful desires, avarice,
Which means greed,
and bewilderment. To get free from anger, one should learn how to forgive. To be free from unlawful desires, one should not make plans. To be by spiritual culture, one is able to conquer sleep. By tolerance only can one conquer desires and avarice. Disturbances from various diseases can be avoided by regulated diets. By self-control, one can be free from false hopes, and money can be saved by avoiding undesirable association. By practice of yoga, one can control hunger, and worldliness can be avoided by culturing the knowledge of impermanence. Dizziness can be conquered by rising up, and false arguments can be conquered by factual ascertainment. Talkativeness can be avoided by gravity and silence, and by prowess one can avoid fearfulness. Perfect knowledge can be obtained by self-cultivation. One must be free from lust, avarice, anger, dreaming, etc., to actually attain the path of salvation.
Yes, there's about a month's worth of Bhagavatam classes. And this, again, notice in the text, none of this is mentioned. It just says Bhima described the aspects of salvation, the Dharma of salvation, right? and Bhagavad Dharma. So Prabhupada is taking this, I believe, from the Mahabharata. Perhaps there's more elaborate explanations in all of these topics. And this is the beauty of Prabhupada's purports, that he pulls out relevant aspects from other shastras or the commentaries that will be pertinent for the reader. So these are all so profound. Any particular statements here that resonated with anyone that you'd like to discuss? Anisha? Yes, you can avoid unlawful desires. What is it? By not making plans. Yes. That's right. The governments have 5-year plans. Krishna Abhishek Prabhu is there. There you go. So, right, it seems irresponsible not to make plans, right? So how can it be a cause of unlawful desires? So what this means is that we have a tendency towards enjoying our senses in the material world. And if we fail to recognize how detrimental that inclination is, and then we plan for enjoying them, that will lead us to immoral behavior or inappropriate behavior. In the second chapter of the Gita, Krishna describes the whole psychology of the fallen soul. Dhyato Vishayan Pumsam. By contemplating the object of the senses, Sangateshu Prajayate, one develops attachment. And that attachment, Sanjayate Kama, leads to lust. Yeah, I gotta have it. Kama Krodha Vijayate. And that lust turns into anger. Why? Because you don't get what you want. Or you get it and you find out you didn't want it. It wasn't as good as you thought. And then it goes on from there. So the point is that contemplating the object of the senses leads to degradation. Therefore, an astute person, a spiritualist, recognizes and nips it in the bud. That, okay, there's no point in my daydreaming about this wonderful boy or girl, or about this wonderful car, or about this wonderful situation, because it just drains our energy in the present and sets us up for disappointment in the future. So this is the meaning of this statement. Don't make plans, and then you'll stay out of trouble. Does it mean we should make a plan for our life, for our temple? No, on the contrary, we should make plans recognizing that we're not the controller. Some people say that man makes plans and God laughs. Right? There's another beautiful statement by my friend Chaitanya Charan that says, we look at the present and plan for the future. Krishna looks at the future and plans for our present. So he sees what we actually need, he sees who we actually are, and then arranges things in such a way so that we can be the best version of ourselves. Therefore, if we make a plan and we're too attached to it, we may miss the signals that are coming from the super soul. This is why it's so important. You know, everything in Krishna consciousness is driven by taste and by love. In my Judeo-Christian upbringing, everything was driven by guilt and fear. If you don't believe, then you're in big trouble. So you better believe. And look how much has been sacrificed for you. So how can you just not believe? So you better believe, or you're a real jerk if you don't believe. Right? This is sort of the theology. So in Krishna consciousness, it's just the opposite. So what do you most love to do? And if you learn how to love things that are beneficial for you, then you've got all of your ducks in a row. Your life makes sense. You have integrity. If the things that you love to do benefit yourself and benefit others, then you are a fulfilled human being. If the things you love to do hurt others or disregard others, then you are a crippled person, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So the point is that finding out what we really love to do for Krishna is self-realization. In order to do that, we have to experience a variety of things. That's what student life is for. Try a little of this, try a little of that, experience that, experience this. And then that helps us determine the thing that we can do. If we find what we love to do for Krishna, we have found what Krishna wants us to do. And when we found that, when we're doing it, like there's no time, you could just do it on and enjoy it, and people benefit from it as well. So, all right, planning is good if it's consistent with Krishna's plan. And if it's not consistent with Krishna's plan, we should be ready to change our plan. And not say, Krishna, why haven't you followed my plan? All right, got it.